Tonight, I need to tell you something Western economics has buried for centuries, and something that is resurfacing precisely as our financial system begins to show every symptom of collapse that a medieval thinker once warned about. Stay with me, because what's unfolding isn't just history. It's a diagnosis of our present crisis. When people talk about the origins of economic thought, the same names always appear: Adam Smith, Karl Marx, maybe Aristotle, if the class went deep enough. But there's a truth almost never taught one that emerged not in Europe, but in the medieval Islamic world. Nearly 1,000 years ago, long before capitalism, long before central banks, a Muslim scholar issued a warning that echoes through every financial meltdown we've lived through. He argued that when money loses its moral compass, societies rot from the inside out. And judging by what's happening in our economy right now, he understood us far better than we're comfortable admitting. Welcome to the Historiq finance, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as the textbooks claim. Let me show you why what you're about to hear matters more today than it did when it was first written. To understand Al-Ghazali, you need to imagine a world that feels both alien and uncomfortably familiar. It's around 1100 CE. Europe is fragmented, poor, and still struggling to emerge from the early Middle Ages. Meanwhile, the Islamic world stretches from Spain to Persia, wealthy, urban, and commercially advanced. Cities like Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo are global centers of trade and knowledge. Caravans move silk, spices, metals, and textiles across continents. Scholars debate philosophy, law, medicine, and astronomy in institutions Europe won't see for centuries. Markets thrive, wealth explodes, and inequality begins to rise just as quickly. It's in this world that Abu Hamid al-Ghazali emerges, philosopher, jurist, theologian, and social critic all at once. He's the kind of mind that can explain the purpose of the human soul and the mechanics of currency without missing a step. Born in 1058 in Persia, he rises rapidly. By his mid-30s, he holds one of the most prestigious academic positions in the Islamic world. But what made him dangerous wasn't his status. It was his refusal to accept what everyone else had normalized. He looked at a society growing richer by the day and sensed something deeply wrong, a culture obsessed with accumulation, but drifting away from meaning, an economy booming on the surface, yet decaying underneath. You don't need much imagination to see the modern parallel. And this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Al-Ghazali asked a question few dared to ask. What happens when a civilization gets rich faster than it gets wise? To answer it, he focused on money itself. This surprises many Western audiences. Al-Ghazali wasn't just a religious thinker, he was one of the earliest philosophers to analyze money as a moral and systemic force. Where later economists reduced money to equations, he examined its psychological and social impact, how it shapes behavior, how it distorts incentives, how it builds or destroys trust, and ultimately, how it determines the fate of nations. At its core, he argued, money was never meant to be worshipped, hoarded, or used as a status symbol. It was a tool, a medium of exchange. He compared it to a mirror, worthless on its own, valuable only because of what it reflects. Money's power didn't lie in gold or silver, but in its ability to facilitate cooperation and trade. Modern economists like to claim this insight as a breakthrough. Al-Ghazali wrote it in the 11th century. From this foundation came one of his most devastating conclusions. Hoarded money is dead money. Wealth locked away in vaults or buried in private holdings, doesn't it just sit idle, it harms society. It doesn't circulate. It doesn't create jobs, fund trade, or support families. It chokes economic life at its source. He described it as freezing the bloodstream of society, a phrase that could easily headline any modern critique of extreme wealth concentration. But his critique went deeper than greed. It was systemic. When the wealthy hoard money, they create artificial scarcity, not because resources are gone, but because circulation is blocked. Prices distort. Markets fail. Ordinary people suffer unnecessarily. This leads to his next warning. Speculation destroys trust. Al-Ghazali had no tolerance for merchants who manipulated prices, engineered shortages, or exploited crises for profit. He didn't see speculation as clever strategy, but as moral decay, profit without contribution. Corruption, he argued, spreads like a disease. Once it takes hold in one sector, it infects institutions, markets, and eventually the entire social order. If this sounds like commentary on financial bubbles, predatory lending, or crisis profiteering, that's because it is written 9 centuries early. Importantly, he wasn't anti-profit or anti-trade. He believed markets were natural, necessary, even noble when grounded in honesty. His real enemy was deception, false weights, hidden defects, manipulated information. Markets function, he argued, only when trust exists. Once trust collapses, the economy follows. Without the jargon, he was describing ideas we now call information asymmetry, moral hazard, and transaction costs, stripped down to their human core. He also placed immense value on labor. Work, he believed, was dignified. Unearned wealth was dangerous. Money gained through effort strengthened society. Money gained through manipulation corroded it. This wasn't abstract moralizing, it was social science. Societies thrive when people contribute. They decay when exploitation becomes normal. His critique extended to the state itself. Rulers often diluted gold or silver coinage to fund their ambitions, stealth inflation in medieval form. Al-Ghazali condemned this as outright theft. Currency manipulation punished the poor, destroyed trust, and destabilized markets from the top down. The state's role, he argued, was to protect market integrity, not sacrifice it for short-term political survival. Unjust rulers, he warned, destroy prosperity faster than any foreign enemy. The pattern should feel familiar. These ideas weren't theoretical. Al-Ghazali watched states fragment, taxes rise, currencies weaken, and corruption spread. When rulers cheated, merchants followed. When institutions lost integrity, individuals stopped behaving responsibly. Corruption flowed downward like poison through water. His conclusion was stark. Societies can survive poverty, but not corruption. Economic collapse is rarely about running out of resources. It's about the breakdown of trust, the invisible glue holding contracts, currencies, and institutions together. When trust disappears, even wealthy nations become fragile. We're watching that happen now. To him, currency stability depended on honesty. Debasement wasn't policy, it was deception. A ruler who manipulated money was stealing in slow motion. He predicted that if this continued, people would abandon their own currency for stronger ones. History proved him right, from Weimar Germany to Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and beyond. Inflation debates today reflect what he understood centuries ago. Money is a belief system. Once belief collapses, the system follows. And he understood human nature with unsettling clarity. People hoard out of fear, speculate out of greed, cheat when they think they won't be caught. And once exploitation becomes normal, collapse is already underway. His most powerful insight was this: you cannot fix an economy without fixing incentives. Laws and markets matter, but they're shaped by human emotion, fear, ambition, desire. Unless systems reward honest contribution over exploitation, instability is inevitable. Wealth without responsibility, he argued, isn't just spiritually hollow, it's socially dangerous. Civilizations rise when accumulation is balanced by duty. They fall when profit detaches from the common good. And that brings us to today. We live in a world where money moves faster than meaning. Inequality reaches historic extremes. Speculation is rewarded more than contribution. Trust in institutions erodes. Inflation quietly drains purchasing power. Bubbles inflate, burst, and return on schedule. Every warning Al-Ghazali issued is playing out on a global scale. What shocks modern readers isn't how outdated his ideas are, it is how unchanged human behavior remains. Technology evolved, scale exploded, but incentives didn't. And his verdict still stands: where justice disappears, prosperity cannot remain. Economies don't collapse because equations fail. They collapse because trust fails. Because incentives reward the wrong behaviors. Because institutions stop enforcing fairness. Money isn't mechanical, it's moral. And when the moral framework disintegrates, finance follows. That's why his ideas matter now more than ever. In an era of debt, speculation, mistrust, and anxiety, his message isn't philosophy, it's survival. If money separates from morality, the system will break. Not might, will. So tonight, recognize what we're really seeing. Hoarding, speculation, currency manipulation, institutional decay, a breakdown of trust all happening at once. This isn't ancient history. It's a map of where we are now. If this gave you a new lens on how the financial system truly works beneath the noise, subscribe. History has answers to our present crisis, and I'll show you where to find them. Stay informed, stay engaged, stay curious. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and stay tuned for our next video on historic finance.